Hello and welcome to this brief video about the Easy Platform permission system. In this video we will be talking about several things. First, we'll start off with the basic understanding of roles and policies, and to describe how the permission system works. And from there on we'll move forward with practical examples such as seeing how the anonymous user works, how you can provide access to limited content to certain users only, how you can work with external contributors, as well as then using the language features in Easy Platform to work with country editors and so on. And finally, we'll take some time to share a few practical tips and then links to resources when you start working in depth with the Easy Platform permission system. So next we'll continue with taking a look at how the Easy Platform permissions system is built. So the core thing to understand is the policies and roles. So a policy is the very core functionality, such as edit content item or delete content item. A role, then again, is a collection of individual policies. These policies will then be assigned to a role, and then this role will be assigned to individual users or user groups. Usually I would recommend to use user groups because it's easier to scale more and more users rather than individually assigning a role to a specific user. To avoid repetition, it's worth noting that a single user can inherit multiple roles and thus policies from many different parent groups. So you should always remember that when you construct your permissions strategy or structure, then to avoid repetition, you can use the location functionality and multiple different assignments to achieve this. Another key part in understanding is the limitations functionality. So in the case of, let's say, content create, what you can define is the type of content that somebody can create. So it will allow you to have more granular control over content creation or deletion or anything in the system. The next item to understand is that there is no access to any functionality by default in Easy Platform. So everything is added explicitly. So this means that you can only add capabilities, and there is no such functionality or capability in the system that you could grant all functionalities and then take something away. This is an additive system which you cannot subtract permissions that have already been given to you. So in this case, grant all would give all permissions, and you cannot remove X with this model. And finally, before we see a little bit how it looks in the backend, we'll see this graph showing the relationships between these functionalities. So the central role is here, which is role. So this is a collection of individual policies, such as content create, content delete, and content publish, which are then a part of the role. And this role is then assigned to either a user group or directly to a user. I would always assign to a user group and then have the users inside that group inherit all the permissions, because it allows for more scalability and easier management going forward. And then going forward now with our demo, we will be using the Easy Platform Tasteful Planet demo. So this is a basic installation which has 4 languages, some functionalities such as the blog, as well as some geolocation items and so on. So this is something which is used for demoing our solution and platform. The admin backend here looks like this, and the relevant parts for permission management are here in the admin tab. We have roles and content types and users finally. So users are here. Users are always in a tree-like structure, which you can collapse here. So in this example, we could look first at the administrator user and the anonymous user. So the anonymous user, for example, if we click this one open and see the roles tab, we can see that this user has the administrator role, and this is the complete overlap of all the policies assigned to this group. So we can find the administrator role, and you can see it's not very useful for day-to-day use, since it gives virtually every capabilities to everything, and because you cannot take this away, it means that if you give these permissions, the user can do a lot of different things. So then next, let's take a quick look at the anonymous user and understand how that works. So on this site, you are always logged in. When you first visit the site, the system will consider you logged in as the anonymous user. So of course I could log in as another user, but I'm still subject to all the limitations for the anonymous user. The anonymous user is found here in the user section, and the anonymous user group. It's a group, but we always use just a single user. And you can see here that we have roles. We have a single role, and then this role has some policies. So if I head over to the anonymous role, here we can see a list of different policies. We have a couple of user policies. First one is for being able to access the different sites, and the other one is being able to register an account. The next two are for the tag management tool, so you can read and view tags. And the next two here are for content. So the functionality is read here with a limitation of the section metadata. So in this case, we have standard, media, and cuisines. So media section is the media library, and standard section is the normal content route that you have. These limitations are something that you can also modify later on. So if I would like to change limitations, I can go into editing mode, and then depending on the policy type, there are different types of limitations available which you can use. So I could limit access for anonymous users for a certain content type, for example, or then use something like the section metadata, or then a specific subtree or so. So these can be used to limit the broader permissions even more granularly. And the final item here was the view embed. So you can also embed content items into rich text fields, and that is one permission that is given through there. So next, let's move forward and take a look at how you could use the permission system to grant limited access to certain kind of content within the system. So first of all, maybe we'll start by creating a new blog, but this blog should be for members only. So I will create a blog here. I'll call it members only, member news, and publish it as an administrator user. And inside here, what we have, then I can create another blog post, or a blog post inside here. I'll just get some content from here and then put something a little bit in there, and so on. And that should be fine. So now we should have already a members news. So these would be only visible for registered users, but of course now they are visible because the permissions allows us to read them from the standard section. So the next area is that we want to make this limited to a certain group of users only. One common method is to use the sections metadata. So if I head over to the sections part, which is not directly related to the permission system, but it's often used together with it, we'll create a new members only, and then members only section. Okay. Actually, I already created it before. So we have the members only section here, but it's not applied anywhere. So what I will do is head over to members news and click details, and then from the drop down I will select members only. So now for the anonymous user, this is no longer visible. This is because of the fact that permissions for the anonymous role limit reading to standard, media, and cuisine sections. So obviously now we don't have any access to it. Of course, I could log in as the admin user, but if I head over to users, and we should have members here, we have 3 members. We can use, for example, Christine Clark as one example user. So if I will log in as Christine, okay, but Christine is now logged in, but she still does not have access to this specific part. So the key is now to extend the capabilities of the member role, which is assigned to this group. So this group has both anonymous as well as member roles, and both of the policies are tagged in here, but in this case members do not really have much addition. So I will head over to roles, then choose member, and the member can modify him or herself and receive policies and then read their own content. What I will do is I will add a new content read policy, and I will put the limitation on members only. So now content read and members only limitation is in place, and if we go to users and then select Christine and see the policies, we should have members and content read and section member only. So now we should be able to read the members news section, which is for when Christine is logged in, and if I log out I won't be able to see this one anymore, and member news will prompt the login. So Christina publish, Christine publish, sorry, and this works. So in this case, to create password protection sections to the system, you don't really need to do any development work because you can handle it completely with the permission system, handling the access to whatever content you're requesting behind the scenes. So we're ready to move on. Next, we'll take a look at how we could use external contributors. So in this case, if we could like to have, for example, a guest blogger being able to blog and add new posts to the site. So this user must obviously be able to log into the administration interface for creating content. So far, our guest users have all used this front end of the site, and then they should be able to create content underneath a specific section on our site. So in this case, the blog, we would like them to be able to create new blog posts. So then if I head over and open the admin, I will log in as a pre-built user. So in the user section, what we have is Peter Smith for guest blogger. Peter Smith has two capabilities, both media editor and guest blogger. So admin Peter publish. Okay, better luck now. Good, so I'm able to log in. So this is good news. So my login permission should be coming from the guest bloggers. I'm able to log in here to the site access admin. But as you can see, the navigation here is missing the content tab and the tags tab. This is not what we want, but I intentionally left it out so that I can show how to reuse individual roles. So in this case, the anonymous role has not been assigned to the guest bloggers. So we could add all of these policies to the guest blogger, but that would be duplication. So it's easier for us to assign the anonymous role for guest bloggers, this group. So this group will be assigned this role. And then now we should have capabilities here to view content, because this is the same capabilities that we added that anonymous users should have. So the next part is obviously the ability to add content. So this add content is something that you can only define here. So if we go into the guest blogger and we start adding a new policy, the policy drop down shows a lot of different policies. We will be only focusing now on the content module, but you could have other functionalities as well. But in this case, I will select content create as my main policy. And then, because if I would give just content create with no limitations, this user would be able to create anything anywhere. So we want to limit that. If we start working our way here, so the content type, we want them to be able to create blog posts. Then we want them to be able to create them in any language. Any language is fine. Any location is fine for now. But what we want to do is limit that they can only create them inside a blog. So the structure here is that we have a blog field, content type, and underneath we have blog posts. So this will enforce that the proper structure is maintained. There's also some parent depth as well as ownership limitations, as well as section. We can define here, for example, sections and members only if we would like to later allow also access to the members only section. And then I will click update, and now if I refresh, this create button should actually, now it will, from when I go to the blog, now this create section is actually working. So I can create in any language. I can create only a blog post. So the next part is to click forward. Now if I created this, you can see here that I could save a draft, preview and cancel, but I cannot publish. So publishing is also one policy. I will add this here. So content and publish, and I will add the same limitation, so they can only publish blog posts, and I will put only in these two sections, so standard and members only. It was right there. So now I will refresh. Now you can see the publish is again working. So I will copy paste some text from here. And some kind of a title. And then hit publish. And now, aside from adding edit capability, so I will need to add content edit and then add the capability of content type. And then I will add again the two sections. This is not necessary, but it's good to be better safe than sorry. And then publish this one. And then now I have also the edit capability. The creation capability just comes from the fact that you cannot create, or that it's grayed out, is just because the blog post cannot be created underneath a blog post. So that's for Peter. If I log in, sorry, there's no notifications. I log out. So I'm again anonymous user. I can go to the blog. Here's our blog post. We didn't have an image, but it's published by Peter Smith, and it's limited only through these permissions. So we didn't need to do any development work here. Okay, next we can move forward with the country editors example. So let's consider now our site should have country editors who can administer assets in the media library, as well as edit content only in a specific language. So on our site we had a different set of languages: English, French, German, and Norwegian. In the backend you can find them in the language section. You can see them here. And as you can remember, maybe for the guest blogger, we did not define any language limitation, but I have pre-built here in the user section a country editors group, which has three child groups. So country editors has English, German, and French groups. Here we have Jura Reiser, for example, is in the English group. I have granted permission a role called country editor English. Country editor English is allowed to do some modification based on the language. Let's take a look. So you can see content create. There's no limitations of what type. The only limitation is based on the language that Jura is using. So let's go back to this site, and then Jura and this. So here we have this, and this user already had access also to the anonymous users, so that's why we can see everything from here. What you can actually see that not even the country editor has access to the members section that we created earlier. This is because it's not granted by the anonymous user. What we can do is add that. So if I go into roles, and here we have the member role, which we first created. We have the content read members only. So what we can do is define an assignment, and we can create the assignment and then select groups. And in this case, because we have so many levels, we can choose the country level instead of any of these. So this will flow downwards to all of these. All of them will be inherited. And then I will click save. And now I will refresh this, and then hopefully we have the member news section here. So this is great. Next part is then to see a little bit on how the content creation works. So here we have this place section. So if I click now the create, you can see I cannot select anything else than English UK here. All of this is by policy allowed, but I will create a place here. I will create, for example, Kolkata, and then generate some new content here. Put some intro, also upload this image, and then maybe put the location, Kolkata. Okay, that's fine, and then click publish. And that works fine. I can go quickly to the front end to see the places tab here. Notice that I'm logged in as the anonymous because of the session is different, but you can see Kolkata is where it should be, and all cities we have Kolkata here. So this works okay, section is okay, and so on. So this works okay, or as it should. But if you consider the structure here inside the user section, we have different groups. What if Jura should also be able to add French content or edit French content? The obvious thought, the first thought might be that you could create a new country editor role with English and French. So you would modify each of these to contain 2 languages. This will of course work, but you will need quite a bit of repetition, and especially if you would have tens of languages, it would become very unmaintainable in large number of cases. But luckily we can use the capability of using the locations functionality to inherit the same role into multiple different locations of a user. To make this more sensible, I'll head over to the Juralizer user. So this user has here locations. So Easy Platform allows you to publish a user or any piece of content in one or more locations. In this case, it's only here, but I will add a new location. I will search for the French. Okay, there's plenty of French. Here's the user group. I'll select the user group. So now you can see this specific user is in 2 locations. So in the French here and in English. So if I, for example, if I edit this title, the title is edited in multiple locations, so that works as expected. The good thing for our repetition is that the user will inherit from all of the locations. So because the English editor role is assigned to the English user group and French editor to the French group, and Jura is in both of them, means that she will inherit both English and French roles. So this means that you could easily add German as well if you would like to, but for now we can make do with that. So Jura is in the other screen here. If we go somewhere maybe a blog here. So let's create a blog post. Now the drop down has 2 languages. So I will choose French. I will choose blog post. And yet again, some additional content here, like this. And then add an image from here. So this will then be published under the blog. And if we see the translations here, the translation is French only. So if we go back for a second to our front end, we go to the blog, you can see it here. So this item is now available here, and this is created in French. So that is a very useful pattern for working with multiple items. So I would maybe, instead of creating what is the role of a user, you could also model your permissions structure, so that what are the capabilities. So in this case, maybe, you know, French editor instead of country editor French, since maybe French editors would have something else as well. So this is a pattern which is powerful and maintains or makes things maintainable even with large amount of different languages and other options. So just remember to use this cascading functionality in your structures. Okay, and finally we're ready to move forward with the tips and few resources. It's just something which to keep in mind when you do work with permission systems here. So do remember to avoid repetition. So if you think you're going to do the same exact thing many times over, please think if you could use the inheritance functionality instead. It will keep things more maintainable. I would say use user groups always, because usually the case is that you will apparently, according to specification, you will ever only have one user who would be able to do that. But 6 months later, you have 2 users. So it's easier to create the group and then just add users to the group. Then you should be, in my opinion, make permissions independent of locations and sections. This is not straightforward. I will describe this a little bit. So here inside the roles functionality, you have, for example, the guest blogger. So if we would limit the guest blogger only to be able to blog in some specific location, instead of us defining some specific limitation here, so that you would only be able to create into a specific node location, you can define the guest blogger to be able to be inside. See, here we have a little bit redundant capability, since this was already limited by the allocation section. But here, sorry, yeah. So this one we need to first select the group. So guest bloggers. And, or actually what we could do is, yeah, well, let's go on with this. But then here, the key part is that you can define the limitations not on the role itself, but during the assignment. So you could assign it then to something specific here. So for example, the members only section, or you could define a subtree. So a specific subtree inside here, you could assign that. So instead of the limitation coming from the definition, okay, well, that's kind of duplicate, so I won't do that. So just remember that if you go very specific here, this can be a problem. So consider if you can use something like that. Then finally, the workflows functionality is something which you should use for more complex functionalities. So if you need to have something that's very from one step to another, you should look at the workflow capabilities, which maybe we should do another video on. And also remember that the permission system is extensible. So all of the capabilities that you have here, roles, and let me just, well, this is certainly, that doesn't make any sense, but everything here is something that you can also create yourself for your custom extensions. So this is just something which, if it feels that you require custom development, also remember that there is APIs, public APIs that you can use to extend the permission system and then use it in the same exact way as you would use it any of the built-in ones. And finally then a few links. So I would recommend to read up on these. So first is the official documentation here on permissions. There's more details here. What are the available policies, how they work, and also then you can see some information on how you can in PHP code, your backend code, check whether a user has access to something and so on. Another good blog post is the blog post on easy.no about secure by default, a little bit more on in written format about our permission model and how it works. And finally, then there's interesting partner and third-party blog posts about customizing our system using the APIs, how they work. So all of these are very useful resources. I will also blog post them underneath this video in the description, so you can also find them. But that should be it for this introduction into the Easy Platform permission system. I hope this was useful for you.